One thing that's very interesting about Tesla is that unlike a lot of other automakers, they have a very small number of cars. They currently only ship 4 vehicles, and those vehicles themselves don't have that many options. This stems from simplicity on the manufacturing side for Tesla, and that's one of their strengths, but going forward, they're obviously going to be introducing more cars. We know there's going to be a Cybertruck and then potentially a Cyber van that Tesla has teased on multiple occasions. Then we know there's going to be a Gen 3 platform that will have multiple vehicles on it. So today we're going to look at a bunch of fake Teslas and Tesla renders and see what great things we could see from Tesla in the future, and also just look at what some cool Tesla concepts could be. So let's get into it, and a special thanks to Delete Me for sponsoring a portion of this video. One pretty fun thing to do right off the bat is to look at past Tesla renders. So these are a bunch of renders of the Model 3 prior to its release in 2016. Up to this point, everyone was basing renders off of the Model S and X and had no idea what to expect for Tesla's new, smaller, more affordable vehicle. So this is one of the first ones, and it definitely looks like a Model S. The front end is clearly based on a Model S with a couple updates and a little bit bigger wheels. And then they've gone overboard with some of the design details, like having cameras here instead of side mirrors, which is something Tesla actually talked about doing on the original Model X prototype. And then this is absolutely taking the original Tesla logo and branding and everything to the next level. Overall, the Model 3 ended up looking quite a bit more bubbly than this car, and of course the handles ended up right here instead of up here. This render clearly doesn't have Model 3 details, and it looks like a smaller Model S, but it kind of nails the shape of the Model 3. This is really very similar to what the Model 3 ended up looking like. The handles right here are replaced with Tesla's newer handles, the new cameras, of course the Model 3 wheels, the updated Model 3 bumper. This is all a glass roof now, and then they updated this to a full-size charge port. But other than that, this is actually a pretty great, accurate render, and I would say this artist pretty much nailed it ahead of the Model 3 release. Here they took this render and added covered up wheels, which is something we've seen on the Honda Insight in the past. Overall, that definitely wouldn't agree with Tesla's design language. This next one was definitely predicting more of an SUV shape for the Model 3. I'm not exactly sure the rationale here, because this looks a lot like a Model X, just kind of bigger, but it could be the proportions. Maybe this is more of a station wagon shape, which is something that people are interested in with a Model 3. A lot of people talk about the Model Y being a great car, but would love to see a Model 3 that's just a little bit smaller, but with a hatchback. This one looks fairly similar, and overall this, to me, from this angle, kind of looks like the Boring van renders that the Boring Company has shared. For me, I always love when renders put it in the real world, and here you can see it at a supercharger next to a Model S at the time, and this is obviously, again, very based on the Model S and the Model X with that front end right here. Not my favorite of all the renders, I must say. This one pretty much looks like a smaller Model S, and we know that Tesla kind of went this direction, but then they rounded things out quite a bit more. From behind, this would be an awesome, sporty car for Tesla to ship, but just the size of the trunk and other things make it so that it's not that practical car that Tesla ended up shipping. As for a future car or the future Roadster, this would actually look quite awesome. Here's another one, and this actually looks a lot like current renders for Tesla's $25,000 EV, and we'll get there in just a minute. Another angle here shows it a lot less rounded out, but again, this is a lot of what we've seen with renders for Tesla's $25,000 EV. I think overall Tesla is going to be going with the teardrop kind of bubble shape long term, so I don't think we'll ever really see a roofline quite like this from them, but I would love to see a car like this because that taller roofline in the back, especially when the car is this short, does add a good amount of cargo space. This is kind of just a subcompact version of the Model X without falcon wing doors, and this very much could be something like what we're going to see with the $25,000 EV, but obviously the Model 3 did not end up looking like this. In early 2021, Tesla refreshed the Model S and X, and leading up to that, we knew this refresh was coming, and many were hoping they would update the design since it had almost been 10 years. So there were some renders leading up to that. Let's give those a look. Here's one of a red Model S, and this kind of takes a lot of the Model 3 design language and puts it back into the Model S, because at this point, the Model 3 had been on roads for about 4 years. I would have loved to see a noticeable refresh like this. This definitely has the sloped roofline of the Model 3, but it does have that smaller trunk, and as we know, Tesla just ended up pretty much sticking with the same design on the Model S refresh. Inside, this render did get kind of one thing right, which is that they went with a horizontal display and the center dash, and then they still have an instrument cluster display, it's just not on the steering wheel like this. I couldn't picture Tesla ever shipping a screen like this on the steering wheel itself, but at the same time, they do have touch-sensitive buttons on the steering wheel now, so I guess anything's possible? Now this was a pretty cool render leading up to the Model S refresh from Allwyn Art, and this was just his vision of what he thought the Model S might bring and how it might look different. Overall, a lot of people were hoping for something like this, because compared to the old one, it's definitely a nice refresh and update. But overall, Tesla kind of just stuck with this design. They widened it out a little bit and added some black accents, and that's pretty much the only difference. From behind, this render is a little more accurate since it does have that more aggressive, wider stance compared to the Model S leading up to this. And Allwyn Art right here kind of nailed the interior as well. We can see a big center touchscreen right here, the only difference obviously being that it doesn't have this interface from the Model 3 and Y because this is over here on the instrument cluster display, but they have that instrument cluster display, and the center console has this wireless charger. I guess the only thing they're missing is the removal of stocks and move to touch-sensitive buttons on the wheel. Next, let's check out renders of the Cybertruck prior to that truck being unveiled. Of course, the design of that truck was pretty much unprecedented and totally unexpected. So here are some designs that people rendered ahead of time. This one is very much based on the Tesla Semi. That makes a lot of sense since that was the truck that Tesla had unveiled prior to unveiling the Cybertruck in 2019. Here it is from the side, and this still has a very nice long bed, which the Cybertruck itself does have, but it has more of a traditional pickup truck size right here, where it drops down as opposed to a big sloped roof. This one might have actually nailed it closer than any other render that we've seen, because this has that super long roof line taken from the Model X right here. It has the very large front end and front bumper, and it has some of those sharp angles. It's just that Tesla took this to the extreme. This render does have 4 doors, it has a light bar up front, and it has a full truck bed in the back, so it nails a lot of things, especially considering we had really no idea what Tesla was going to bring out up to that point. This was kind of a Mars rover that was shown in a SpaceX render, so a lot of people thought the Cybertruck could be taking some inspiration from here, but nothing really came of this. This is a teaser that Tesla themselves had shared, so they were considering this design definitely for a period of time. This looks very similar to those other renders, basing it on the Tesla Semi. But then as the Cybertruck release approached, they did unveil this with this lineup here. The Tesla logo actually never made it to the production version of the Cybertruck, and this has definitely changed quite a bit, but it looks like this is the front light bar with the front bumper, and this ended up being the big windshield. So that red render actually kind of nailed it. Here were some more conservative guesses at the time, and these were based on the Model 3 S and X. As we can see, this is basically just a Model S truck, a Model 3 truck. Aerodynamics wise, it still has a pretty good roofline and a pretty good slope. But these renders are from Tesla officially. These are all things that Tesla was working on at the time leading up to the Cybertruck. Clearly they had the Cybertruck vision in mind heavily here, and they went a bunch of different directions. These are some more rounded out versions, kind of like the Tesla Semi. This one's pretty crazy and would stand out in a crowd for sure. Right here, this image has some very sharp angles that did end up on the Cybertruck, but I can't really make out what this is actually. It kind of looks like a boat almost. And then right here might be the closest to what Tesla ended up going with. It's just that Tesla took this to the extreme and basically made it a triangle. One pretty crazy thing is that the Model 3 truck does exist in the real world. Someone modded this car and actually made this a real thing. So a lot of renders were predicting the Cybertruck would end up looking something like this, because it's basically just a Model 3 with 2 doors and a full functional truck bed. This is actually a pretty cool small truck that I would love for Tesla to make long term. Before we go any further, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Delete Me. My entire business is online, so my data privacy is especially important to me. Did you know that there are companies that buy people's personal data and make their information banks available to just about anyone for the right price? That means information like your personal address, phone number, photos, and social security number could be public right now. Some databases also log your relatives, making them just as vulnerable. The reason this is dangerous is that scammers can easily find your information and use it maliciously. They can also figure out ways to scam you that manage to get past your personal scam detecting instincts. That's where Delete Me comes in. Delete Me is a service that keeps you safe by deleting your personal information from data broker websites. Delete Me is a fast working solution that I found super easy to set up. You just submit your information to them, and their experts find that data and delete it from those data brokers. The whole process was stress-free, and they scrub your information in just 7 days. When the job is done, they send you a detailed privacy report explaining exactly what they found, and they keep an eye on it so you don't have to. New data brokers pop up constantly, but Delete Me continues to work to remove your data from them. Protect your privacy with Delete Me. Click the link in the description below and use the code SHAW to get 20% off. For a while now, we've known that Tesla's goal is to get to cheaper and cheaper electric vehicles. The Model 3 was originally announced at $35,000, and today it actually starts at about $40,240 in the United States. It's a little more expensive, but the features are a little better than what they originally announced, but still, we want Tesla to be able to ship something even cheaper than this. At Tesla's Battery Day in 2020, they detailed their roadmap for future battery technology, ultimately resulting in a $25,000 fully electric vehicle. However, that vehicle is adapted and changed in a few different ways. In one way in particular, we're not sure if this car is going to be just a car or if it's going to be a robo-taxi. We know Tesla's hard at work on full self-driving, and in their minds, they're very close to achieving it. So they want to be able to make a dedicated robo-taxi like this with no steering wheel. Elon Musk has specifically talked with employees about the $25,000 EV not having a steering wheel or pedals of any kind. So this is about what the interior would look like. It would be a pretty wild concept and look pretty cool if they could get there, but I think this car is going to come a lot quicker than they can actually achieve full self-driving in the way that a robo-taxi does not require any pedals or steering wheel. In any case, this is a render that Tesla shared for their Chinese recruitment of a team to design future vehicles. So this is expected to be the concept Tesla is basing their $25,000 EV off of. Now granted, we just looked at what renders Tesla was working on and looking at the time when working on the Cybertruck, and then we got what the Cybertruck actually became. So a $25,000 EV, or Model 2 as a lot of people are referring to it, could look a lot different than this, but this might be one of Tesla's starting points. This right here looks kind of like a Honda Fit, but just a lot more rounded out, and that shape would be very popular for Tesla. Very compact 4 or 5 seater with a hatchback. So there have been a number of renders out there of what this car could look like, and this one is basically just based on the Model Y. It's just kind of taking a Model Y and shortening it a little bit. Up front, it looks exactly like a Model 3 or Y, and the reason I think this might change is because Tesla is expected to totally refresh the headlights on the Model 3 Project Highland, which would then trickle down to the Model Y Project Juniper, and both of those would come out before any new Model 2 or $25,000 EV would come out. So if they were basing that car directly on the front end of the Model 3 or Y, this likely will change by the time that car comes out. Here's a little bit of a different take on that same kind of concept, taking a Model Y and then squishing it. The reason I don't think Tesla would do that is because of this door right here. I don't think Tesla's ever going to ship a car where the door swings the opposite direction this way. Although, technically, I guess the Tesla Semi does ship a door like that. I also think that Tesla is going to end up rounding this car off in the same teardrop shape that they're shipping all of their cars in. Now this render is something I think people would like today. A lot of people are hoping that the Project Highland Model 3 will bring out a hatchback onto this car, and this is basically envisioning a station wagon version of the Model 3. It's just taking the back end, extending it a little bit, and extending that roof line so it adds a lot more cargo space in the back, and it has a hatchback, of course. It still has that Model 3 front end, and then you just get more practicality out of the back. I'm just picturing how many drums I could fit into this car, and it'd probably be 2 or 3 full drum sets. Here's a render of what a $25,000 Tesla could look like, but this is based on the Model S. I think the thing they're missing here is the 4 doors. But that said, they could go completely the smart car direction. For the $25,000 car, I'm not sure that's going to happen, but long term, who knows? So this is a very, very small kind of smart car version of a Tesla, and it's taking the front bumper design from the Model S and X and just cutting it off to where only 2, possibly 4 people could fit in this car. Here's another concept. This one is 4 doors, and this to me kind of looks like a Chevy Spark. I love that they took the 20-inch induction wheels from the Model Y and just made them tiny. This to me might be the smallest package that Tesla would actually ship in the real world. I like this one in particular, and I think it's because I used to own a Honda Fit, and that was a fantastic car. It's just really practical. You can fold the seats down and get so much out of that very small vehicle, and this kind of looks like that or possibly a Chevy Bolt. I would have removed the antenna because Tesla's never going to ship an antenna, but I could definitely see the $25,000 Tesla looking like this. But very interestingly, this is Tesla's teaser of what their next-gen vehicle is going to look like. And from first glance, it basically just looks like a Model Y. So maybe they really are just going to go with the mini Model Y design, and that takes us back to renders like this one, which could definitely be what we see. The only other real teaser we've gotten from Tesla is this one where it's completely covered up, and we can guess that this actually isn't a complete render that they're really covering up. It's just to give you an idea and put a placeholder there so you can kind of envision, oh, they're making a future vehicle that we haven't seen yet. So these are all renders of the outside of the vehicle, but Tesla has shown us a little teaser of the inside of what this car would look like. And they're saying with all of these improvements they're doing on the manufacturing side, they'll see a 10% mass reduction, 14% range increase opportunity, and 370 fewer parts. Ultimately, the design of the car is going to come from that. They want to design the car to look cool, and they'll probably base it on parts and stuff that they already have in manufacturing. But at the same time, if they have to invent something from the ground up to achieve their goals of range and sustainability, they'll do that. So that's all for the future Model 2 or $25,000 Tesla, but in the near future, Tesla is expected to refresh the Model 3 with what they're calling Project Highland. This right here is the first full leaked image we've seen of the Model 3 Project Highland. It has a totally updated bumper with new headlights. Right here, the camera has a little inset that goes into the door, which is new for the Model 3. So we have some renders of the Model 3 Project Highland, and they're going to be likely pretty accurate because they're based on this very detailed photo that leaked. Here's an example of what the Model 3 Project Highland looks like out on the road when we're spotting it. So right here, there's that camera detail I was mentioning earlier, and the mirrors are supposed to be slightly updated as well. And then right here, they're covering up the rear, and we haven't gotten an image of that leaked, so let's look at what renders are imagining that will look like. This one is pretty great and likely pretty accurate. I think Tesla might not go as sharp as this is envisioning, but we have seen that the blinkers are likely moved to over here, and that this is inset into the back trunk lid. I personally love the look of this new trunk lid. Even though it's just a small update, it really distinguishes this car. And here's another render from All One Art and Cybertruck 420 that shows it from a slightly different angle. Since that full photo of the front of the Model 3 Project Highland leaked, we haven't seen many people take this on from a rendering perspective, but this one does, and it basically looks exactly like what we expect if they were to make this car in silver. I think this render does a good job of demonstrating what Tesla is going for, and this might even be what their images look like of what they're envisioning for this refresh. That's what we most expect, but these renders envision what the Model 3 refresh could look like if it was based on the Roadster. The Roadster has been announced back since 2017, but nothing has come of it, and it seems like it's still years away from ever being produced. This takes the Model 3 and the Roadster and combines them into one package. I think this does a great job of taking the Model 3 headlights, kind of squaring them off a little bit, and then adding these awesome lines towards the back here, taken directly from the Roadster. Here's another angle, and I think this is just a really great looking car. But the only thing is, if they made this car, they'd probably totally cannibalize Model S sales. I honestly think as well, if Tesla just shipped the Model S Plaid to look like this car, it would be game over. So that's for the refreshed Model 3, which we do know is coming. But in the long term, we know that Tesla is also working on a cyber van. They've teased some version of a Tesla van a lot in the past, and now we think and pretty much know for sure that it's going to be based on the Cybertruck. Because at Investor Day, they showed the Model S and X, Model 3 and Y, and the volumes that they're planning to produce those in, the Semi, the Cybertruck, and then right above the Cybertruck is another car that looks to have a very long roofline, probably 3-row SUV, or some sort of van based on the Cybertruck. This first one envisions what Tesla's service would look like if they were to use the Cyber van. Seems like this would translate absolutely perfectly, and it'd be a very easy change for Tesla because it's basically just taking everything from the Cybertruck, extending this line, and making it a van with a big opening in the back. It might be very accurate to what Tesla does. When you look at the Model 3 to the Model Y, they took as much as they could from the Model 3 and kept it there. For a lot of people, those cars are indistinguishable until they actually know the difference. That could definitely be the case right here with a Tesla Cyber van, and it would be perfect for their mobile service because right now, if you get a mobile service truck, it's actually gas powered. But here's a car buzz render of a Tesla Cyber van, and the difference here is that it has a sliding door in the back. And here it is with the back door open. But other renders show it more as an SUV instead of a cyber van. Both have their purposes and their uses in the real world, but SUVs are very, very popular. Tesla already ships the Model X, and that's kind of their 3-row large SUV that they ship, but the volume is so low there, and they're probably learning a ton on Cybertruck manufacturing to be able to make that car much cheaper than the Model X, that they could replace it with a cyber SUV down the line. This basically just takes the Cybertruck, extends it back so it has 3 rows instead of a truck bed, and it could be very similar to the difference between an R1S versus an R1T. Inside, this envisions what the second and then the third row would look like in a cyber SUV. But then comes the question, what if Tesla takes this cyber design language and puts it into their cheaper $25,000 electric car? Ultimately, they're building it from the ground up to be cheaper to manufacture, so maybe something like this, a very small Tesla cyber car, could be what they go for. This one's my personal favorite because it takes that design language but makes it a little more like a normal car as opposed to what the Cybertruck looks like. This still looks very unconventional compared to Tesla's render of what their future next-gen platform car will look like, but anything can change as we know from Tesla. Now these next renders for a Tesla compact car actually come from someone who worked on the original Cybertruck design. They definitely take it in a different direction by rounding out everything instead of having sharp angles, but it's pretty cool to see. Here it is from behind, and it's clearly a very small two-door hatchback. Here's another angle of the back, and we can see that a lot of this is glass, but here's what it looks like from the front. Overall, the front, aside from the materials chosen here, definitely look like a current Tesla. And if they could figure out a way to make this safe and make this easily manufacturable, this would be a very cool looking vehicle. Definitely a radically different design than any compact hatchback out on the road right now, but I would love to see a car like this. I imagine they would need some structural elements added here for actual safety, but I love this design and this concept. That was a mix of a few different renders. Some of them could be definitely what we see in the real world. Some of them are what we wish we could see. But now let's look at some crazy concepts. This is one I never picture Tesla making, but this is a station wagon version of kind of the Roadster or a Model S. And this back here takes some design from the Cybertruck. So it's kind of a combination of everything Tesla makes, and it's in Tesla red. This would kind of be the ultimate futuristic station wagon. This right here is what the Cybertruck could turn into if the military decided to fully use this vehicle. You know this has to be in Tesla's mind when they're designing the Cybertruck, at least to a degree. This is a render of what a two-door Tesla sports car could look like, and the updated thing here is that it does have Falcon Wing doors. Right now, Tesla only ships that on the Model X, and some people wish they could have that on their smaller sedans. Do I think Tesla will ever make this car? No. Some form of this right here is something we could see on the Cybertruck. I don't think we'll see solar panels expanding like this, but a larger Cybertruck with 4 wheels in the back could be something that Tesla makes long term as they ramp up production and decide they need to make bigger versions of this. But these solar panels on top could be something that allows you to charge up either while you're driving or while you're parked and could make this a self-sustaining vehicle. That's a long-term vision that a lot of people have for electric cars that is very, very cool. To me, the coolest part about these renders is imagining where Tesla can go and then seeing where they actually go. It's pretty crazy to see renders of the Cybertruck and realize that they were very conservative compared to what Tesla actually is planning to ship with the Cybertruck. The biggest question in my mind and a lot of people's minds, though, is which direction is Tesla going to go for a future Model 2 or $25,000 EV? And I can't wait to see what the future holds there. Hopefully these renders give us a little teaser of what we could expect from Tesla. But which one was your favorite? Leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.